Women often get a reputation for not standing up for themselves in the workplace, and I'm glad to say that I have tried to help dissolve that notion. I remember marching into an attorney's office over the protests of his administrative assistant, just like you see in the movies. And I was going to confront him, why he had given an interview to the paper and not one to television as well. If he expected news media to cover a story with the accuracy demanded, he needed to provide access to everyone, and it was something that was really important to me. I'm very passionate about that stuff. I remember covering a news story about a controversial emergency services meeting, about a technically inadequate E911 system in central Illinois. I walked into the meeting. There was nowhere to sit. There were 24 men in that room sitting down, and one woman besides me. She was an administrative support person who was taking notes. Noticing that I had nowhere to sit, one of the community leaders called out to me loudly to come over and just sit on his lap for the meeting. Mm-hmm. Well, the room erupted in laughter. Why wouldn't it, right? Yeah. Well, having to cover the meeting, my only recourse was to say, no, thank you, I'd rather stand. Leave it at that, because I had a job to do. But don't get me wrong, it's not just men that I notice perpetuating stereotypes. It's been very surprising to me over the years that the focus on women as objects is very often perpetuated by women. For example, once at a crime news conference, while waiting for it to start, I watched one of the male organizers strike up a conversation with my male competition about the topic of the news conference, while a female organizer came over to ask me about my makeup, haircuts, and where I got my suit. In fact, one anchor woman colleague of mine would get frustrated that all the phone calls that came into the station critical of her appearance, came from women. Because she would check the front desk, we would document it there. The one call she ever received from a man was to inquire about where he could buy an outfit she'd worn at the anchor desk because he thought his wife would like to have it for her birthday. So how do you deal with some of these things without getting mad or getting crazy? I think you take the good with the bad, and then learn to laugh when you can, and then fight when you have to. Somewhere along the line of my career, I quit apologizing to myself for not being a man. This approach has helped me a great deal. The workplace and the world, for that matter, are not necessarily 50-50 endeavors, but what men and women offer each have value just differently. It basically explains my personal hybrid view of feminism, which I have grappled with over the years, feeling very strongly about women's issues, which I see as human issues, not wanting to deny my femininity, to be able to enjoy and join and steer collective conversation, because I valued myself enough to value the contributions of others, whoever they are. Each of us needs to be able to bring who we are to the table. That is key to courageous, connecting communication. Anthropologist Helen Fisher, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she is fascinating to listen to when she discusses her human research. She talks about communication and the gender factor and how it inevitably is changing the workplace experience. She makes it a point to say men and women need each other to make things happen. We know this. We live it every day, don't we? But what is interesting is scientists are finding more and more gender differences in the brain. She says women's ability to find the right word rapidly and articulate their points goes up in the middle of the menstrual cycle when estrogen levels peak, but even at other times of the month, their verbal skills surpass men. Interesting, huh? And did you not think you would be talking about that topic when you came to this meeting? Yeah, I just have to keep you on your toes, just so you don't know what's coming next. That's what it is. But it's fascinating. I mean, this is just science. This is research. It's very interesting. Women use words as tools, as in the case during child rearing, to communicate. They teach babies and young children. They use that skill. We take that for granted sometimes. Men are more likely to discard information that they consider extra as they focus in. Exceptionally useful, exceptionally important. Women, on the other hand, she says, are innovative and creative with information. And Fisher points out they're complex web thinkers, equally useful, important skills, but all in different ways. It's reasons like this that make it so clear to me, in my experience, that the information age relies heavily on women as messengers and the leaders who craft communication we need to exist and to thrive. We have so much control of information as women. It's an immensely powerful position to be in. So my question to you is, do you own that power? Do you have the guts to claim it? What do you or will you do with that power? These are the kind of questions that I consider all the time in my position as chair of AWC National. All of us communicate to those around us in ways we realize and don't realize each moment of each day. We impact those around us. And we likely barely think about it most of the day until we prep to walk into those big important meetings or to come and speak at an event like this tonight. But the vast majority of our communication happens in the tiny things we do, hundreds or thousands of times, and we don't even much consider it. How we smile or don't smile as people walk by, how we dress, the way we move, how and if we respond to those around us, if we engage and how we do it when a conversation is going on near us, what we put on paper and how we do it. So many ways we connect and communicate who we are and what we value. How we spend our lives communicates, broadcasts, if you will. Where we go, what we do, who we're with, how we interact, how we spend our time. Author Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote one of my favorite books, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. The book is about authoritative oppression and survival in meager circumstances. It was an eye-opening book for me at a pivotal time in college when you're trying to just open up your world and see things differently. Solzhenitsyn once said, for a country to have a great writer is like having a second government. Think about that for a second. For a great writer reaches people. Researcher Helen Fisher points out more than half of the writers in America today are women. They're complex, pattern, contextual, holistic thinkers in her mind. Imaginative, put things into more complex patterns. They have negotiating and people skills. We need this. As AWC, we work to understand how we can harness the power of women and help each other become the most effective communicators possible through connection and having the courage to use this instinctual and biological gift to spread the word. Along the way, I've come to realize a few things. For one, change reminds us we're alive, and I think that's a good thing, generally speaking. You won't always make the right decisions. You just need to know yourself well enough to know why you make the decisions you do. And when you know that, there really are few, if any, regrets, because you've paid attention along the way. In working with so many people, something else has become clear to me. There is a very big difference between skepticism and cynicism. Skepticism is about joining the conversation, demanding more information as you draw conclusions about what's going on around you. Cynicism, on the other hand, has always struck me as giving up. When I hit this with people, what it says to me is that they're in a general state of ready rejection. Asking questions of the world is an important thing to be able to do, but giving up on it is not useful. Virtually every story that I have covered and every video I've ever been involved in making has something vital in common. It did not matter if I was covering a neighborhood development conflict, a kid at college story, or even making a promotional or training video. The topics are different, but the point's all the same. This hit me while I was on one of those days in news when I was pumping out 5 or 6 stories for a couple of newscasts one night. There's this meditative aspect to it, and I see some of my former news colleagues around me here, and I'm looking at them, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're doing a lot of news stories, it gets a little meditative where you'll be sitting there going type, 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 print it out, type, 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 print it out. And I was just doing that over and over again. And when you make things for 5 or 6 newscasts, it's a lot of script writing. But here's what it comes down to. In all of that learning, I figured out that it didn't matter the story, it didn't matter what I was doing, everyone just wants to be appreciated and understood. That is it. If you truly get that in communication, I think that you're halfway to your goal. And when I figured that out, it revolutionized my writing. It took me to a whole new level, my ability to connect and grasp what was going on in front of me. You have a choice whether to add positive energy to the world or subtract from it. And I'm going to give you an example. A blog that I'm enthralled with is markandangelhacklife.com. It is the most uplifting collection of can-do lists I have ever come across. And if you fancy yourself a lister, this is your paradise. Again, it's markandangelhacklife.com. Anyway, I read a story a while back that struck me, and it has stuck with me because it shows the way we communicate, process connection, and use our lives with profound courage, and it can happen in purely innocent ways. And it's a reminder to me that each one of us has tremendous communication power, no matter our age or gender. A doctor had to operate on a little girl who was in a car accident, and she desperately needed O-negative blood. It's kind of rare. There was none available, but her twin brother was at the hospital, and he had O-negative blood. The doctor explained to him it was a matter of life and death. His sister needed his blood because it was a matter of life or death. He sat quietly for a moment and then said goodbye to his parents. The doctor didn't think anything of it until after taking the blood, and the little boy then asked, "So when will I die?" He thought he was giving his life for hers. as it turns out, they were both fine. But at this moment, who's not feeding off of the positive energy of that little experience? Just a little experience, but that's got a profound effect. Communication, connection, and courage. He communicated his connection and with courage. You are communicating every moment of your existence with the choices you make, the kind of connections you choose to nurture in this world. It shows others your cowardice or your courage as you learn to be yourself in your life on this journey we are in together. Thank you so much for your support and inspiration that you give me all my years in AWC and this fabulous Bloomington-Normal AWC board, past, present, and future. You are great. Thank you so much.